The news day continues here on One News Now. I'm Charles Lehan. Some Filipinos are welcoming the recalibrated testing and quarantine guidelines amid the rising cases of COVID-19. They believe that this would be better for their livelihood. More on this report by Jenny Dongo.
Celso travels all around Quezon City every day. It's his job to monitor the security guards under his wing. And because his employer enforces a no work, no pay policy, he's not allowed to get sick. But since Celso is fully vaccinated, he is confident that he is still protected against COVID-19. He is among those who favor the recalibrated quarantine protocol, which shortens the isolation period for those with COVID-19.
Hindi na ako natatakot kasi kaysa naman walang makain. Ito yung hanap buhay ko eh. Dapat mas maiksi pa kasi kaya nga bakunado, inobligan ng gobyerno yung pagpabakuna ng bawat isa dahil sabi nila, yun ang paraan nila para ma-safety ang bawat isa.
For Celso, if one is asymptomatic, he should be allowed to go out after 3 days.
Dapat mas maiksi pa dun sa 7 days kasi masisira yung mga may trabaho eh. Pagka pinahaba, doon lang tayo umaasa sa araw-araw na trabaho. Katulad sa amin, pag hindi kayo pumasok, walang bayad.
Meanwhile, Adrian, who just got his first dose last month, felt obligated to get vaccinated amid the rising cases of COVID-19. He is also in favor of the new protocols, especially since he's paid a daily rate. In fact, Adrian wants to shorten the quarantine period even more.
Sa hirap ng buhay, kaya siguro kailangan kahit 5 days lang, okay na siguro. Kung nararamdaman ng tao na okay naman na siya. May symptoms naman, pwede naman siguro ituloy yung 14 days. Pero kung wala naman po, baka naman siguro kahit within 5 days lang okay na.
According to the Health Department's latest protocols, mild and asymptomatic cases would only be required to isolate for 7 days, for as long as they are fully vaccinated. If unvaccinated or partially jobbed, quarantine period increases to 10 days. But for severe cases, patients still have to undergo the full 21-day isolation regardless of vaccine status. Immunocompromised patients also need to obtain a negative RT-PCR test after their 21-day quarantine before being allowed to go out. As for asymptomatic close contacts, those fully vaccinated will only have to isolate for 5 days from the previous 7 days. For the unvaccinated and partially vaccinated, a 14-day quarantine is still required. Meanwhile, health workers would only need to quarantine for 5 days if they are fully vaccinated. But for those who have already received booster shots, no quarantine period is required unless recommended by the hospital. With this, the DOH continues to defend their decision to shorten the quarantine period for health workers.
Kailangan na talaga i-update ang protocols ng COVID-19 based ito sa vaccinations natin at saka of course ating behavior ng Omicron kasi nakita nila yung Omicron ang incubation period nito lesser na 2 to 3 days compared dun sa nung original Wuhan virus ng COVID-19 na talagang mga mga 5 to 7 days. So definitely ito yung nakabase sa mga scientific data na ginawa rin ng international institutions.
As for testing, the Health Department is also prioritizing the vulnerable population, including health workers, senior citizens, and persons with comorbidities. Asymptomatic close contacts outside of these groups will no longer be required to get tested. This as the government admits that the resources for testing are limited.
Testing shall now be optional for community-level actions. Instead, symptoms monitoring is recommended. Should testing still be used, testing should be done at least 5 days from the day of exposure.
Testing czar Vince Dizon earlier said that testing up to 85,000 persons every day would cost the government 200 million pesos. But others are more interested in the self-administered antigen test. However, the FDA has yet to approve any kind of DIY COVID testing. For now, only 2 manufacturers have applied to get a special permit in the country.
Magkakaroon po talaga ng pagsusuri pa kung yung produkto sa merkado ay nagpe-perform po ayon sa inaprubahan ng FDA. Pagka false negative po, false sense of security po ang mangyayari. Akala mo ikaw ay walang hindi ka pwedeng makahawa. Pag naman false positive naman, unnecessary panic naman po on the part of the patient.
This month, the DOH is expected to release additional guidelines for the use of self-administered test kits. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, We Are One News.
Senate President and Vice Presidential aspirant Tito Soto is questioning the no vaccine, no ride policy. Soto says the policy is discriminatory, not to mention difficult for drivers to implement. He added that the government is not doing enough to change the minds of those who do not want to be vaccinated.
Most of them who do not want to be vaccinated, ang nakarating sa kanila at ang nakikita nila ay yung mga nababasa nila kung sa social media or sa sa mainstream media, nababasa nila na may mga epektong ganito, may mga side effects. Kung may explain mabuti sa kanila yan, and then perhaps they will be on their own volunteering.
Meanwhile, vaccine expert panel chairperson Nina Gloriani said that the impact of natural immunity will vary for each individual. But instead of relying on natural immunity, Gloriani says getting vaccinated is still the best form of protection that a person can get against COVID-19.
Yung natural immunity will depend on the person, kung ano ang level ng kanyang, yung health niya, yung immune system niya. Kung meron siyang mga sakit, ano ang age niya. So maraming factors yan. No? The immune response will depend on so many factors. Innate, galing sa doon sa pasyente o galing sa labas. So yung galing sa pasyente, largely age yan. At yung kanyang general health status.
The Education Department is not in favor of declaring a nationwide health break for teachers, as proposed by a group of educators. DepEd Undersecretary Diosdado San Antonio tells 1PHS sa Totoo Lang that it's difficult to hold a 2-week health break for teachers on a nationwide scale, as not all areas in the country have the same COVID-19 situation. San Antonio says it's now up to regional directors or school division superintendents to suspend classes and to give teachers their proposed health breaks. But the official notes the priority of educators should still be the continuation of teaching and learning despite this health crisis.
Hindi po kami lahat na naniwala na kailangan gawin ito sa buong bansa kasi hindi naman po para-parehas ang sitwasyon sa COVID sa lahat ng lugar. At alam naman po natin na nagpapahalaga tayo sa buhay at kaligtasan ng mga mag-aaral at mga kasamang guro, pero mayroon din po tayong sinisikap gawin na tuloy-tuloy din na dapat natututo ang mga bata kasi nga po alam natin ang kalidad ng edukasyon ay isang malaking habon din sa ating lahat.
Former Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio and former Ombudsman Conchita Carpio Morales are warning that a Marcos win in 2022 would also mean the end of the country's fight to redeem his family's ill-gotten wealth. Zoni Esguerra with the report.
The Philippine government has yet to recover up to 125 billion pesos of ill-gotten wealth from the Marcos family. This is according to former Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, who's one of the main conveners of the Sangbayan political coalition. There are also other liabilities in terms of real estate taxes amounting to 203 billion pesos.
Now, the bottom line here is Bongbong Marcos, a certified convict who is now running for president, actually claimed part of the Swiss account. The Swiss account that is the ill-gotten wealth of Ferdinand Marcos, he claimed it as his inheritance. As court-appointed administrator, Bongbong Marcos has refused to pay the 25-year-old final estate tax liability of the Marcos estate.
Should former Senator Ferdinand Marcos Jr. win the national elections in May, the chase for a total of 236 billion pesos unrecovered properties may be coming to an end. Carpio says that should Marcos Jr. become president, he can just dissolve the Presidential Commission on Good Government or PCGG. The Marcoses also opt not to pay real estate taxes to the government. The former justice adds they can likewise exploit some companies, citing the time when former First Lady Imelda Marcos contested that they own Philippine long-distance telephone company, San Miguel, and some of businessman Lucio Tan's ventures.
I do not expect the 125 billion to be recovered anymore. He owes the government 203 billion pesos as of now for the estate tax. Is the administrator of the estate. He has been ordered by the court to pay. He refuses to pay up to now. And nobody seems to hold him to account for that. If he becomes president, lalo na. Goodbye na yan. Imelda intervened in the PLDT case. In fact, Imelda also claims San Miguel. They will reopen all of that. Sasabihin nila, half of your companies belong to us.
Former Ombudsman Conchita Carpe Morales also expressed disappointment over the narrative that the Marcoses don't have ill-gotten wealth and that Marcos Jr. allegedly has no knowledge on the issue.
There has been this propaganda and people believe it, that indeed the Marcoses did not have any unexplained wealth. They harping on the alleged tons and tons of gold that Marcos purchased earlier. We thought it proper to enlighten the public.
Though many believe that the Marcoses are not involved in corruption, the Supreme Court proves otherwise. In the case of Ruchenko versus Sandigan Bayan, Morales says two of the Marcos dummies admitted that they were ordered by former President Ferdinand Marcos to organize 23 dummy corporations, including Philippine Holdings Incorporated. 111,000 shares of the Philippine Telecom Investment Corporation or PITC are registered under the Philippine Holdings Inc. Imelda has also admitted to court that the Marcoses are the beneficial owners of PHI shares. Carpe Morales wrote the decision in 2006.
Let me conclude by quoting something that I came across some time ago. It says, I don't understand why. Well, it's something like this. I don't understand why some people keep on lying and they don't even feel bad about it. Do you understand? I don't. Up to now, they insist that walang nakaw na yaman, or if at all, kung may nakaw na yaman, they still want to get a big pie in the chart. So that's ballooning.
Despite clear and concise evidence presented by Carpio and Morales, Marcos Jr.'s camp has yet to fully comment on it. According to his legal counsel, Attorney Vic Rodriguez, they do not want to respond to the cited facts, which they describe as merely speculative. He says it's best to ignore the likes of Carpio, who he believes are merely throwing supposed nuisance petitions against the Marcos Jr. For News 5, Sonia Reyes Esguera, we are One News.
A group composed of former cabinet and senior officials of the Ramos administration is supporting Vice President Leni Robredo's presidential bid. In a statement signed by 23 former officials, the group said that, quote, the country sorely needs a leader who will inspire unity, solidarity, and teamwork in government and among all Filipinos, and that VP Leni is the only presidential candidate who can credibly lead Filipinos closer to that dream. Former presidential assistant Benjamin De Leon says more officials support Robredo but were not able to sign the document. In a series of tweets, VP Leni says she's humbled by the show of support and believes that they're the best pool of cabinet secretaries that the country has seen in years. And those are the top stories at this hour. Join us again later at 10:45 a.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play. Register for a free account at www.signalplay.com so you can stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We're One News.